It was December 19th, 1944. The temperature had dropped to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The snow was so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And somewhere in that forest, in the frozen dark, 19 American soldiers were doing something that nobody ordered them to do. They were digging a hole, but not for shelter. They were burying their medals, every ribbon, every bronze star, every citation, one by one going into the frozen earth. And the man giving the order, the sergeant leading these boys, was 23 years old. His name was James Mercer. And before that night was over, only 4 of those 19 men would walk out of those woods alive. This is their story, and almost nobody knows it. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand what was happening across the entire Western Front in December of 1944. The war, most people believed, was almost over. Paris had been liberated. The Germans were retreating on every front. Allied commanders were privately talking about Christmas at home. The men in the field could almost taste it. Then, on December 16th, everything changed. Hitler launched the largest German offensive on the Western Front since the invasion of France. 3 German armies, over 250,000 men, punched through the Ardennes forest in Belgium and Luxembourg. The attack was so sudden, so massive, that entire American units were surrounded before they even knew what was happening. History would call it the Battle of the Bulge. The men who were there just called it the worst thing they ever lived through, or didn't live through. Now, zoom in on a single spot on that map. A small village called Lanzerath, a crossroads. Nothing special about it, really, except that on the morning of December 19th, 1944, a young sergeant named James Mercer and 18 other men were told to hold that crossroads, no matter what. No armor, no air support, no artillery on call, just 19 boys, rifles, and whatever courage they had left. Let me tell you who these 19 men were, because history forgets names, and these names deserve to be remembered. James Mercer was from a small town in rural Kentucky. He had worked at a hardware store before the war. He was quiet, his men said, thoughtful, the kind of man who listened more than he talked. He had been promoted to sergeant 6 months earlier, partly because he never lost his head when things went wrong. He was about to need every bit of that. Beside him was Private First Class Danny Kowalski from Chicago. 20 years old, wrote a letter to his mother every single week without fail. His last letter, the one he wrote the night before the German attack, talked about a dog he had seen wandering near the camp. He said it reminded him of the family dog back home. He asked his mother to give the dog a biscuit for him. He never sent another letter after that. Just let that land for a moment. There was also Corporal Eugene Tate from Mississippi, 19 years old. He had lied about his age to enlist. His family didn't find out until after the war, when the army sent the paperwork home. 19 men in total. Some of them had been in combat for months. Some had barely fired their rifles at anything other than a target range. But that morning, all of them knew something was wrong. The sound coming from the east, that low, grinding, endless rumble, was not the kind of sound you ever forgot. It was tanks, a lot of them. By mid-morning, the first German scouts appeared at the edge of the tree line. Mercer told his men to hold fire. Wait. He needed to see how many there were. There were hundreds. The 1st SS Panzer Division, one of the most feared and most brutal units in the entire German army, was moving through Lanzerath, and the only thing standing between them and the open road west was 19 American boys and a crossroads. What Mercer did next surprised everyone who later heard about it, including the army historians who spent years piecing the story together. He didn't retreat. He didn't try to radio for help. The radio was already dead. He looked at his men, and he said something that one of the 4 survivors remembered for the rest of his life. He said, "If we run, they drive right through. If we stay, we slow them down enough that maybe, somebody else gets away. So we stay." 18 men nodded. They dug in. They rationed their ammunition. And when the first German advance came, they opened fire. What followed was 9 hours of fighting. 9 hours. 2 men against every tree, every boulder, every frozen ditch. They shifted positions constantly, so the Germans couldn't pin down exactly how many of them there were. They made noise in 2 directions at once. They played every trick they knew. For 9 hours, they stopped the 1st SS Panzer Division cold. The German commander, a seasoned veteran who had fought on the Eastern Front, in Africa, in Italy, later told investigators he believed he was facing at least 3 American companies. Maybe more. He thought the crossroads was heavily defended. It was 19 boys. One by one they fell. Kowalski was hit in the 2nd hour. Tate held on until late afternoon. By the time darkness came and the Germans finally broke through, 15 of the 19 men were dead or wounded and left behind in the snow. Mercer and 3 others slipped out through the trees. Now I need to tell you about the medals, because this is the part of the story that I haven't been able to stop thinking about since I first read it. When Mercer and his 3 surviving men reached American lines the next morning, they were taken to a field hospital, and Mercer, frostbitten, half-starved, barely able to stand, asked to see a commanding officer. He wanted to report the deaths of his men. He was told there would be commendations, citations, medals. The 4 survivors would be honored. The dead would be honored. Mercer was quiet for a long time. Then he asked a question that nobody expected. He asked, "What about the men who died in the 1st hour? The ones who never got to fight? The ones who just got hit before they even saw what was coming?" He was told those men would receive the standard honors. "Standard," he said. Just that word. Standard. 3 weeks later, when Mercer received his own Silver Star in a small ceremony near the front, he thanked the officer, shook his hand, walked outside, and found a spot of frozen ground, and dug a hole, and put the medal in it. He never fully explained why. But one of the other survivors, a man named Roy Atkins from Georgia, who lived until 1987, gave an interview late in his life. And he said something I want to read to you, exactly as he said it. He said, "Jimmy didn't think the medal was his. He thought it belonged to the 15. And since he couldn't give it to them, since they were in the ground or in hospitals or God knows where, he put it in the ground too. He said the ground was the only thing that held all of them together now. The ground was the only thing that held all of them together now." James Mercer came home to Kentucky in the summer of 1945. He went back to the hardware store. He married a woman named Ruth. They had 3 children. He never talked about the war. Not once, not to his wife, not to his children, not to anyone in town. When people asked, he would just say he was over there for a while, and then he came back. His daughter Carol said that when she was a teenager, she found a photograph in a box under her parents' bed. It was a group photo. 19 young men in uniform, squinting into the winter sun, somewhere in Belgium. Most of them were smiling. She asked her father who they were. He looked at the photo for a long time. Then he said, "Good men." He put it back in the box. And that was all he ever said about it. He died in 1991. He was 70 years old. His obituary mentioned that he was a veteran of World War II. It did not mention Lanzerath. It did not mention the 9 hours. It did not mention the 15 men or the medals in the snow. Most obituaries don't. I want to tell you something about why I make these videos. History books remember the generals, the strategy, the turning points. They draw the arrows on the maps and explain how the Battle of the Bulge was eventually won. And it was won, at an enormous cost. But the arrows on the maps don't have names. James Mercer has a name. Danny Kowalski has a name. Eugene Tate has a name. 15 other men who died in a frozen Belgian crossroads in December of 1944. They all have names. They all had mothers who waited by the door. They all had something they were going back to, or hoped they were going back to. And most of them never made it. The crossroads at Lanzerath still exists. If you go there today, it looks like any other quiet spot in the Belgian countryside. There's a road, some trees. In winter, snow. There is no monument there, no marker. Just the ground, which, if you believe what Roy Atkins said, holds all of them together still. If this story moved you, if it made you think of the names we don't know, the ones who did extraordinary things and then just quietly went home or didn't come home at all, please consider subscribing to Old Glory Stories. This channel exists for one reason: to make sure the names don't disappear. I'll see you in the next one.